Well, hello there. I hope everybody's doing well today. Thank you for joining us. And we are going to get into a discussion of key performance indicators. And so this is going to be a 15-minute discussion. And then if you have questions, I encourage you to use the chat box or shoot me an email. I'll keep my email open and we'll answer them all at the end. Again, I want to thank you for joining us. I did send out some documents, some handouts before. And so if you should have those might help a little bit. You don't really need them, but the big thing is this is the outline of what we're going to talk about today, and just gives you some key pieces of what we're going to address. So just you can use that as a guide, and then we're just going to walk through that. So with that, what is a key performance indicator? Well, basically it's a measurement. It can be a number, it can be a percentage, it could be a number divided by another number, it could be a couple numbers added together, it could be a lot of different things. But what it is an indication of how you're doing. And that's what the whole purpose of this exercise is are we on track, with what our goals are? And we're going to get into how we develop them in a minute, but right now, we just have to think about what is a way to get us an early warning sign and give us an idea of what things mean. For instance, if you go to a ball game, which obviously we can't do right now, there's a score. There's a constant scoreboard. I mean, if you watch 5-year-olds play baseball, even though they may not be keeping score, the kids know the score, because that's how they determine, okay, how are we going to win? And that's what's important. And in business, it's a matter of how do we win in our businesses? And so that's where the key performance indicators give us an early warning sign of what is going on in our business. Now you can have a couple kinds of key performance indicators. One's a leading, one's a lagging. And so a leading one is going to be something on the front end, and it's going to be an indication of what's going to happen. A lagging might be, what were sales yesterday? Well, the leading part is how many sales calls did you do the week before, or the month before, or the year before. I mean, again, depending on your sales cycle. So this is where we have to start looking at the different types of key performance indicators, and we have to get the right ones for your company. And what do I mean by that? Because you hear a lot of different industry statistics and things like that. We have to figure out what's right for you, what's important for you. And the other part here is that they're going to be in comparison to something. I'm reminded of the old George Carlin skit about, he's a newscaster, and he goes, so here we have a partial baseball score, Philadelphia 5, and he drops it. Well, it doesn't tell you anything. It's funny because of that. But this is where key performance indicators have to give us a reference to either last month, last year, yesterday. It could be a trend. These are where we start looking at things in comparison to other numbers. And again, same calculations. So with that, it's like, well, okay, you have these numbers, but what are we really doing with them? Well, a key performance indicator is only appropriate when we're getting into figuring out what is critical for our success. Because a key performance indicator measures something that ties into a critical success factor. So what is that? Well, that basically is, what do we need to get right? What do we have to get right in our businesses? It might be our marketing on how to get foot traffic in our store. It might be the delivery of our services or our production of our products. It can be a lot of different things, and it can be internal or it can be external. So if you have a farmer, or a sod farm, if you think about that, what's the key thing? Well, they need rain. So they may measure that. They have no control over it, but they're still going to measure it. Why? Because then they know what they have to supplement. And so then they have to water. Now that actually costs them money. So but this is an indication of how they have to constantly balance their business. And so that's where we start measuring what is critical for our businesses. And this can be temporary or permanent. So if you have a permanent strategy of, getting close to your customers and things like that, you might have some key performance indicators that tie into that. Now, at the same time, right now, as we're coming out of this pandemic, you might have some critical success factors for the short term that might be different than your long-term ones. And short term, we just have to get traffic in the door, or, if you're a restaurant that's been closed, things like that. So we have to, okay, what is critical right now? We got to get people restarted because everybody's used to doing things a little differently the last 2 months. And so that's where the permanent, or sometimes you might call it tactical, short-term tactical decisions. That's where we have different key performance indicators for those factors. So what are our steps? And it's pretty straightforward. Our steps are going to be, we're going to go through down here. We're going to identify our goals. And this is everything, every week I'm coming back to that. But we have to have clarity on where we're going. And this goals could be on the month or quarter or year. And you can do this for a personal. Like you could use key performance indicators for, losing weight. What are they? And, it's exercise and intake, food intake. So those are things we can start doing. And so we identify what the goals are. And then what are the steps to achieve those goals? We have to identify what those are. And then at each step, what's critical. And we're going to walk through an example of this here in a second. But what's critical at each step? And then we figure out how to measure it if you're successful. And then we have to create systems to do this, because it all gets back to systems. We have to have a consistent system for accumulating this. So what we're going to do here is do a real quick example of this. And this would be a temporary tactical example, but say you're a CPA and you're going to help clients with their businesses. We want to improve your businesses. And we decide to do Zoom calls on business building ideas. So over here is my goal: improve clients' businesses. So there's 3 steps. There's probably a few more, but this is I'm trying to keep it simple. We're going to create the outline of what we're going to talk about and other materials, invite clients, and then I got to execute the Zoom calls. Pretty straightforward. Okay, well, what do I need to do for educational material? What's critical? Well, it's got to be useful. It's got to be something they can do something with. It's got to be actionable. Okay, so that's fine. Invite clients. I have to do the right thing, get the right topics that clients attend. So I have to I use constant contact or whatever. How are you going to do that? And then the Zoom calls, I have to deliver them to where they're engaging. I know I'm not totally engaging. I understand that. But, I got to get to a certain level that's acceptable. And so that's where we have to focus. So if those are these things right here are my critical success factors, then here's my key performance indicators, or here's potential ones. So, if it's useful, are clients using it? So I can track. I'd have to talk to clients, but I can say, okay, who's using, who's creating key performance indicators now? That would be a leading indicator. Now, I could also do a lagging indicator, or are the businesses improving? So if they're using this and making better decisions, a year from now, their business should be healthier than what it is right now. Same thing with got to get clients to attend. How many people are on the, that actually open the email? So that's before the Zoom call even. I send out the email, how many open it? And then the percentage of clients that attend. Now, if I send out an email and normally I get 30 or 40% that open it, and this week I get 2%, I know my Zoom call is probably not going to have very many people on it. So that's giving me a leading indicator of success for that Zoom call. And then the percent of invitees that attend, obviously that's on the back end of the invite part. Now, there's execution of Zoom calls. I have to do it well. Well, one of the indications is, do I get any questions? That's, am I provoking clients? Am I getting referrals? And then how many people are attending every week? And, if this drops to 1 or 2 people every week, then obviously I have to rethink whether or not I want to do it. Now, it might be that there's just a bad week, or I may have picked a bad topic. Those are things that I have to evaluate. It may involve going back to the clients and asking, but I have to go through it. But this is telling me, this is giving me feedback. I hope that makes some sense. So that's the process for developing key performance indicators. So now, let's go through a couple real quick examples. Like restaurants right now, to-go orders might be a critical piece because their openings, as they open up, they may only be able to have 50% of the capacity in their dining room, or 40%, or whatever that is. So all of a sudden, they need to start measuring to-go orders maybe. Or marketing, you got percentage of emails open, or, is this working? Retail stores, foot traffic, early indication. And again, it's going to be slow. So this may be an area where we're looking more at the trends. Are the trends going in the right direction? Grocery stores, how much is out of stock? People go to the grocery store once a week. If they're out of stock, then they're gonna get it elsewhere. They may order it from Amazon. So this is where they lose sales if they're not careful there. So those are some real quick examples. Every business is different though. So there's a couple last minute notes here, things I want to just briefly go through. Key performance indicators can frequently be cascading. What do I mean by that? So say you have a manufacturing business and you have gross margin, well then you may, and your gross margin is 40%. Cascading it means you're taking it down to different product lines, or even to individual products, or to customers, or to locations if you have multiple locations. Okay, so we're looking at the big picture KPIs, but then we start drilling down into where's this going astray? And if it's going astray in a certain area, then why? Now, it might be a good reason to have a lower gross margin in something in an area, but that's fine. But that needs to be intentional. They have to be actionable. It's like, okay, if something's is identified on this, what are we going to do with it? That's the key. It's got to be something we can use. And then it's for improvement. So that's what the whole thing is. It's not for telling an employee that they screwed up because we're keeping our margins too low. It's like, how do we improve out of this? And so we're going to, make sure that this is linked to our overall strategy. And that's the key thing here is, what are we focused on? What are our goals, and how do these things tie to it? And if it doesn't tie, then maybe we're measuring the wrong things, and that can get you in trouble. And then I'm going to just reiterate, this has to be in comparison with something. This is a key thing, is making sure you know what you want. A lot of times businesses will have budgeted KPIs. And it's like, okay, here's what we got to compare to, in addition to prior year or prior month. But, we've made changes and now we need to hit certain levels. Are we doing that? So a couple key takeaways. just keep in mind, key performance indicator is an early warning signal. And it's the canary in the coal mine. You know, it's telling you that you may need to look at something. You may not be able to change it right then, but you need to be aware of it. And these will change over time as the business environment changes, as your business itself changes. Maybe you have a little more focus in one area than another. And so you do have to periodically evaluate these. So that's really what I wanted to cover with key performance indicators. There's one other, just to show you, there was one other handout I gave you, and this is just some sample ones. And again, we got to be careful with samples because they may not be specific, but just to give you some ideas of things to think about, you know, and financial performance, customers. And when I put over here PM and PY, it's prior month and prior year. You know, some of these things are good for trends. Some can be budgeted, some dollars, some percentages. You know, we have a lot of different pieces here. And so it's just a matter of figuring out what is right for you. So with that, I just want to thank you all for being part of this. And now I got some time for any questions, if anybody has any. Like I said, throw them in the chat box or shoot me an email real quick, and we'll see what we can come up with. Let's see here. Okay. Well, one, can these KPIs be non-financial? Yeah, they can be. It can be something as simple as, you know, foot traffic in the door in a retail store. It could be NPS on that one screen I just showed you is Net Promoter Score. It's a way of calculating whether or not your customers love what you do. It's a non-financial thing because it's based on surveys. That's why we all get all these surveys. But anyway, so there's a lot of non-financial things. Employee engagement can be huge. So yeah, this is something that it's not just the finances, because these non-financial ones frequently give you an early warning signal on what's going to hit your financials. So I hope that answers that. How do you know when you have the right number of KPIs? You know, some people want to measure everything, but then they get lost in the details. This is where it's important, I think, to have cascading levels. So, you know, it's hard to say what the right number is because there is no perfect answer. Part of it depends on the complexity of the business. But, you know, you probably want 5 to 10 to 15 at the company level. But then you have some others below that. So maybe you have one KPI on marketing and it's telling you something. But then you might have another 10 or 15 inside marketing department that if something's not looking right, then you have other things you can drill down to. You know, we want to keep it as simple as possible, but we also don't want to have, I've seen, yeah, like what I just showed you, that one sample thing, that's too much. You know, we don't want all of that detail. We don't need all that detail normally. So it's a matter of trying it and seeing what works for you. But simpler is better than more. Let's see. How about tracking employee morale during the pandemic? Yeah. And that is something, you know, this is an area where I think a lot of businesses have lost a little bit of control because you don't have people in the office together. And so how do you do it? You know, there's surveys, there's different ways. You got to get creative on some of this because you don't have that connection. You know, if you're in an office, you walk in, you say hi to everybody, you know who's, you know, normally know if everybody's doing well or not. And you can you're asking some questions and you're getting a feel for it. When everybody's working remotely, nah, it's a little tougher. So you need to do some things to, figure this out. Some of it's making phone calls, some of it's surveys, but whatever you need to do, you need to figure that out and do it. Are there certain KPIs that every business should track? I don't know if there are. This is you can argue about this because I think everybody has slightly different needs. So for instance, if you say, I need to know what the gross margin percentage is, every business should have this. I could argue that Amazon didn't care what their gross margin is when they were starting up, because Jeff Bezos had a plan for taking over the world, I think. I'm joking, but I'm not. He was more interested in market share. Whereas other businesses, like we have smaller businesses, we're focused on building this business. So if we're going to sell it or if it's going to generate better cash flow, whatever that is, those are more important to us. And so that's what we want to focus on, is what is important to you right now? What do we need to accomplish? There are some consistent KPIs, gross margin percentage for your industry, things like that. Maybe accounts receivable, number of days sales and receivables. There are some things that are there, but you may not have a cash flow problem. So therefore, that's not as critical, but you may have a problem with attracting new customers. So that's where you start focusing on those pieces. And that's where, like when I was just saying, industry KPIs, so many industries have their own KPIs and everybody's like, oh, I'm not doing as well as this. Those things aren't always comparable. And that's where you got to be very careful with industry KPIs, because you might have different goals, or you're in a market that you just can't sell it for the same price that the rest of the country can. It's just the way it is. And so if that's the case, you have to win in a different way. And so you have to think about these things, and you got to say, okay, how am I going to succeed here? And that's why it's very specific. The industry KPIs and the general KPIs, those give you some ideas on where to start with. But then it's a matter of, how do I really dial in there? And let's see, I think that was about it. And one other one here is, how hard is it to develop KPIs? And that is something that takes some time. And you can start using some general ones, but you really have to spend the time on the critical success factors. That's where the key is. Because if you can identify that, then you can start figuring out, okay, what do I need to be measuring? So anyway, I would encourage time spent there. That is really critical. Are there any other questions for right now? I think I've answered most of what's been posted and emailed to me. So I think we'll go ahead and close up here, but if you have any questions after this, as you're thinking about it, please don't hesitate to ask me, shoot me an email, whatever. I will be posting a copy of this on the cloud. I'll send you the link to it. It will only be good for a week. We're in the process of creating a YouTube channel. And so I've had to pull down some of the previous recordings, but that will get posted in a YouTube channel here shortly. I think it is, hopefully within the next week, we'll have all these back videos up. Let's see, we have one more. How long should they be tracked before deciding if this is a trend? That's a tough question. I think it's something that it's identifying the trend, and then it's a matter of, okay, what are you going to do about it? So If it's long enough, where you're getting past a cycle or two, then you probably, okay, this is a trend, and then what do we need to do with it? You got to be careful. Like, for instance, if if a grocery store was saying, oh, our sales are going through the roof, well, it was toilet paper, and that's not a trend because that was just a one-time thing. It's going to drop back down. So those are where you got to be careful with trends, because it's hard to identify. So anyway, I think that was it. Thank you again for participating today, and I hope you got a lot out of it. And like I said, I'd be glad to answer any questions that pop up later and help you with any of this, with identifying these things. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.